Join me today. We're going to talk about hybrid picking. We're going to open up your picking options with a very versatile technique that adds a lot to your playing. So stay tuned. Hello and welcome, friends, to this episode of the Play Guitar Podcast. I am Lee, and this is the podcast that's determined to make you a better guitar player. No matter if you're just starting out or you've been playing for years, this is the show that will help you become the guitarist that you always wanted to be. If you are new here, hello, and make sure you subscribe to the podcast and check out the description for all the links from the show. How are you doing today? Are you one of those folks that just always wants to play fingerstyle, or are you one of those folks that always wants to use a pick? Well, let me tell you something. You've got another way to go. We're going to combine the two a little bit today. We're going to talk about hybrid picking. This is a lot of fun. It's something that you may have looked at or thought about. A lot of players start doing this just out of necessity, just because, I want to grab that string there and I've got these fingers there, but you might not know it had a name. That's how I started with hybrid picking, by necessity. But what is it? It is when you use your thumb and your index fingers to hold the pick, and you use your other free fingers to pluck other strings as well. I was playing songs that might have had a quick note on the next string, or maybe an open string I would like to play right after I picked a note. It just needed to be played quickly, and it was easier to just grab it with one of my free fingers than to shift my pick all the way to another string. Another time I was doing some Travis picking, and I felt that the bass note needed to be sharper. So I picked up my pick and used hybrid picking the same way that other players would use like a thumb pick. So there's a couple different applications for this. Today, we're going to take a look at hybrid picking and find a few different ways that you can use this very expressive technique in your own playing right now. So the long and short of it is using everything you've got on your picking hand. But once you try it, you start to notice some other reasons that you might want to use this over other types of techniques in your regular playing. Number one, the tone. The sound of plucking strings. That sound of plucking the strings with your fingers, it's not just very different than using a flat pick. It sounds kind of pleasing. There's a natural type of expression that you get from your fingers on the strings. Plus, you've got that mixture. You've got the sharp sound of the pick tones alongside the warm sounds of finger plucks and pulls. I was just doing pulls there. And it adds something. I would call it rich or complex. It's very different than just everything sounding the same all the time. And having the choice of using one or the other anytime you want, that's pretty powerful. You can be in mid solo and you can decide, how you want every line to come out. Have them all be different. And you have instant access to those techniques as you play. You don't have to do anything to prepare. You get increased speed. Your fingers, especially if you're bracing, right? What's bracing? Bracing is when you kind of take your pinky and sometimes your third finger in your pinky and you touch the pick guard with it on the neck, on the other side of the strings there, right? And it gives you kind of a way to hold your hand over the strings and have some sort of a reference point, knowing where you are. It helps. But if you're bracing and you're right over the other strings, your fingers are right there. Your fingers are there. Why not take advantage of it? Why not use them a little bit too? Another good thing about this is accuracy. If you're moving from string to string, like across strings, that's a landmine for mistakes. You make a lot of mistakes going back and forth between strings that are not next to each other. Hybrid picking across strings is pretty easy. It can make sure that your string skipping is very solid. You can use it for other things too. Complex patterns, barrel rolls, kind of like bluegrass techniques, Travis picking, or just arpeggiating chords. You can use it in all sorts of different circumstances. All that while not having to switch to drop the pick and play all fingerstyle, or have the pick and just not use your fingers. It makes it easy to create complex picking patterns on the fly. So let's go to segment number 1, getting started with hybrid picking. The easiest way to get started with hybrid picking is with your chords and your scales. Let's talk about chords first. So let's just pick some really simple chords. Let's do a C chord, and I'm going to pick the bass note, and I'm going to pull, or I could arpeggiate with my fingers, right? So instead of, this is here what it would sound like, I'll pick. With the fingers, it's softer. Very expressive. You can also get like a bass line. It makes the bass line stick out. If I did that just fingerstyle, that bass is a little too soft there, but with hybrid picking, it really sticks out. It really sounds nice. I would start with the middle finger and the ring finger with this. So that chord I just played was a C. I'm going to use my pick on the A string, and I'm going to use my middle finger. I'm going to put it on the G string, and then of my picking hand, my middle finger of my picking hand, and I'm going to use my third finger, the ring finger on my picking hand, on the B, open B string. Now, of course, you could do it on any string. Just moving them. This is D and G, this is G and B, and this is D and E, right? You could alternate back and forth. Really add a bunch of different things, right? But has a very pleasing sound to it. And see, in there, I decided, okay, I'm going to stick with the pick for a couple of the embellishers. And it brought the dynamics up a little bit. So that's the first place that I would start right there. Just taking simple chords and using the pick for the bass, and then using your bare fingers for the rest. But what about scales? Let's talk about scales a little bit here. We're going to do alternating the pick and the middle here. So we'll stay in the key of C. I'm going to do up at pattern 1. This will be your pinky at the 8th fret. And I'm alternating pick, middle, pick, middle, pick, middle, pick, middle. And now you could maybe alternate middle and ring. As I'm alternating that time with picking one note and then middle, and then picking the next note and then ring, there's a lot of economy of movement as I'm going across the scale, meaning that you could really get this going pretty fast if you got used to it. I don't do this actual exercise all the time when I'm playing. I would usually just alternate picking one finger, but going back and forth between the two, you could really get moving fast on these things. And this is something that, beginners, you could try with your just open position. To me, this hybrid picking of scales especially for going up and down scales, it sounds very country. Sounds very like the beginnings of a chicken picking type style too, because there's a lot of that and a lot of this hybrid picking and chicken picking. If you look at Brett Mason, he uses a thumb pick all the time too, but he holds the thumb pick. Here's my camera. He holds the thumb pick as if it was a regular pick a lot of the times too. So it's kind of goes back and forth between those two thumb pick and then hybrid picking. So you can use this for double stops. And what I'm doing here is I'm playing some double stops that are most likely like root and third for some different diatonic chords up and down the fretboard. But I'm picking the G string note using the pick, and then I'm using my middle finger to pull the notes on the high E string. And that's how I always do double stops too, that are separated between strings. If they're next to each other, you could pick them, but I usually will do hybrid picking all the time. I love the way that double stops sound with the softness and the smack of when you pull that string. The double stops are very cool like that. Pedal tones. I use hybrid picking for pedal tones constantly. So let's do this. We were in A, right? What I'm doing is playing an A major scale. And in between, I'm using the pick for the notes. But in between each of those notes, I'm playing a high A note that I'm pulling with my middle finger. So pick, finger, pick, finger, pick. And you can get those. And it doesn't matter how far apart these notes are. If I have this as an E up to the 12th fret and I'm playing the low E string. The farther that I get away from the high note, say I'm down playing on the A string and the low string and my high notes on the high E string, because I'm doing hybrid picking, I have a much greater accuracy than I would if I was trying to use the pick for all of those things. Notice I'm not talking about the pinky so much. Usually the pinky, most people will use it for bracing. Usually it's kind of touching the front of the guitar, the pick guard if you're using an electric guitar, or if acoustic guitar. But say you're playing and you've got your pick in your hand and you're playing through a song, and you just feel that it calls for breaking the chord up. I will use both my middle finger and my ring finger. How about we move on to segment 2, which is building technique and the speed needed to use hybrid picking in our playing. The first step is finger independence on our picking hand. Usually we're just using the pick if you're not a fingerstyle player, and that beginning of trying to use your other fingers to play other strings is pretty tough. So one exercise that you could do is fret just a regular chord. And we're going to start working just with the pick and the middle finger first. And you can start alternating. Let me see. There we go. Now I'm putting a 4-finger G. then I'm playing the low E and then using my middle finger to play the A string. Then I'm playing the A string with the pick, using my middle finger for the D. Now picking the D string and middle finger for the G, picking the G, going to the B, picking the B string, going to the E string. And then you could do that same idea, but now with your middle finger. And the next one that we would try would be to incorporate the third finger in with that as well. So I might do this pattern. That's picking the low string, and then the next string using my middle finger, going back to the low string, and then using the third string after that with my ring finger, and then taking that across the strings. Getting independence, alternating between the two fingers is really, really important. Increasing speed and precision. How we're going to do that, we're going to use a metronome. And anyway, we had a whole episode on technique exercises a few weeks ago. And using the metronome is our friend. I teach using metronomes all the time. And using the metronome, we do it like weightlifting. We slowly increase the weight. We slowly increase the tempo. So if you start to fall apart at a certain tempo, then you're going to back off a little bit, make it a little bit easier for you, so you get confident. Once you're confident, then you start over time, every few days, maybe bumping up the metronome a few beats per minute, so that you can play it accurately, and you don't move on if you're not playing it accurately. If you're making mistakes, that you know where you are. It's a good thing. When you start to make mistakes with the metronome, it's a good thing, because you get knowledge. You know, this is where I am. This is where I need to be. It's important stuff. The next part would be applying these techniques in your practice. Dedicated time, separating these out from strumming. If you've got new chords, you can strum the new chords, but at the same time, try some hybrid techniques along with that. Arpeggiate the chords, pull some of the strings, but make sure that you're doing this in your practice each week. You're going to love it. You're going to be opening up things that you wouldn't believe. You're going to be playing in different styles that you've heard your whole life that you didn't think that you could play like that. You weren't sure what they were doing, and it's just going to make sense. I love it. I love hybrid picking. You do it all the time, and I can't wait for you to try it at home. And before you run off and start practicing your hybrid techniques, head on over to the Play Guitar Facebook group. That's our Facebook group where we talk about all the different podcasts and get into it. And let me know what you think about this episode. And if you have any ideas for episodes, or if you want to learn more about some more technique stuff, go ahead and say hi to us over there. I have a free gift for you. It's the Big Four Scale Patterns worksheet. What are the 4 scales that you'll use in 99% of popular music? And you can download my guide to get all the patterns of major, minor, major pentatonic, and natural minor. So you'll be good no matter where your hand is on the fretboard, and you'll get out of that rut of playing in just one pattern all the time and sounds very similar. You can get it over on the main page at Play Guitar Academy, or click the link in this show notes. Okay, that was a lot of fun. I'm going to call it That's a Wrap. Thanks for joining me today for the Play Guitar Podcast. Make sure to hit the button below and subscribe to the show. And if you have benefited from this podcast, please leave a favorable Apple Podcasts iTunes review. It's the best way to make sure we get this very valuable content to more guitar players around the world. And if more help, structure, results, and hanging out with some cool members of the Play Guitar Academy. If that sounds good to you, head on over to playguitaracademy.com. It's the most exciting and carefully playing guitar system, and together we will build your online home base for guitar. Thanks again. I will see you next week. Bye-bye.